The most vulnerable part of any application is API. Follow those tips if you want to test it properly. Understand the API documentation. Thoroughly read the API documentation to understand the available endpoints, parameters, authentication methods, and expected responses. Use proper tools. Tools like Postman, Swagger, and Insomnia are excellent for testing API. They provide a user-friendly interface for making requests and viewing responses. Verify endpoint functionality. Ensure each API endpoint works as intended. Test different HTTP methods, get, post, put, delete, and verify the responses. Check input validation. Test how the API handles various types of input, including valid, invalid, and edge case data. Ensure the API properly validates and sanitizes input to prevent vulnerabilities like SQL injection. Test authentication and authorization. Verify that the API correctly enforces authentication and authorization. Check if endpoints require valid tokens, API keys, or other authentication methods, and test access control mechanisms. Check response codes. Ensure that the API returns appropriate HTTP status codes for different scenarios. For example, a successful request should return 200 OK, while an unauthorized request should return 401 unauthorized. Examine response data. Verify that the API returns the correct data in the expected format, JSON, XML, etc. Check for correct data structures, data types, and values. Rate limiting and throttling. Test the API's rate limiting and throttling mechanisms to ensure they prevent abuse. Send multiple requests in quick succession and check if the API limits the number of requests allowed. Error handling. Ensure the API handles errors gracefully and provides meaningful error messages. Test scenarios where the API might fail, such as network issues or invalid requests, and check the responses. Security testing. Perform security testing to identify potential vulnerabilities. Test for common issues like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, XSS, cross-site request forgery, CSRF, and parameter tampering. Use automated tests. Implement automated tests for your API endpoints. Tools like Postman, JUnit, or Pentesting can help create test suites that run regularly to ensure the API functions correctly. Test performance and load. Conduct performance and load testing to see how the API performs under different levels of traffic. Tools like Apache JMeter and Locust can simulate multiple users and measure response times. Mock external services. If the API interacts with external services, use mock servers to simulate those services during testing. This ensures your tests are not dependent on the availability of external systems. Version control. Ensure your API versioning strategy is sound. Test how different versions of the API behave and make sure deprecated endpoints are handled correctly. Continuous integration. Integrate API testing into your CI/CD pipeline. This ensures that any changes to the codebase are automatically tested and any issues are caught early in the development process. By following these tips, you can thoroughly test your API endpoints and ensure they are robust, secure, and reliable.